Welcome to what I'm calling Game Dev for Everyone. Um, and today is kind of, like I said, going to kind of be an introduction to what this is, who am I, if you don't know me, which I think all of you do, but that's fine. Um, uh, and like a whirlwind tour of how programming works for the purposes of this. Uh, yeah, it might be something like that. It's more like I think that it's more akin to something like dyslexia, I think, where like certain shapes kind of like blend together, and I have a hard time differentiating them. So like text very far away, um, like I kind of can't see very well. Like I have all my interfaces on everything at like 120% magnification, um, and like the dark green on the dark gray didn't help. So let's get started. Uh, So yeah, who am I? What is this? This is kind of like towards the end of last semester when I was teaching at this college. I We were all trying to figure out like what to do about like teaching from home and stuff like that. And I realized that there was a point where I was like, I'm gonna just try teaching this class on Twitch and see how that works. And it kind of hit me at that point. I've been like thinking about sort of like ways of implementing open education sorts of stuff for like a while, and it kind of hit me at that point that like you could just do that, right? Like you can just teach a class on the internet, and who's going to stop you? Especially now that I'm like unemployed, I have some time to like put together uh, some lessons and teach some things on the internet. So, who am I? I think that most of you know me, but like, I'll do this. This is fine. My name's Hyacinth. I'm non-binary. My pronouns are they, them. I generally make like horror games. That's kind of like my vibe and sort of what I'm known for in certain like game communities and stuff like that. And I've been teaching for like probably about a decade, in a whole bunch of different capacities, like from like in classroom sorts of things, academic enrichment programs, college, uh, small kids, after school programs, museums, etc. And I've made educational games for a while also. Um, yeah, you will kind of get homework. Like I'm gonna end most things with like, okay, here's some ways to like expand on the stuff that we did and like some exercises to do and stuff like that. Like I'm not grading you or anything like that, but this stuff works better if you practice it, right? And I kind of already said the top level of like what this is or like where this came from anyway. But like this is basically a version of a college class that I taught I've taught a few times, but like most recently when this idea came to me was at the tail end of last semester, like I said. And I wanted to kind of redesign it for the internet. That said, like, this isn't going to be like a college semester length thing, so it's going to be kind of super time compressed. I'm going to try to fit, like, that's one of the things that I'm going to be trying to manage effectively is how long everything should take. But I got a plan. It's fine. This is also like a low pressure place for you to learn a thing or two about the basics of making video games, right? And this is also like an experiment in open access education. That I want to hammer home that thing that this is an experiment. There might be problems with it. It might not all work. We're all doing our best, right? Yeah, this is an experiment. I hope that it works as well as I want it to, but like I said, a lot of it is going to be super time compressed and I've never done this specifically before. Like I've taught in a bunch of different contexts. This isn't one that I've really done that much. So, that said though, like this is largely based on a curriculum that has been successful in the past. So, whatever. So who's this for? So like basically anyone, right? It's in the title. Game dev for anyone. For everyone. But like, if you programmed before, cool. You probably like have a leg up on some of the concepts. Yeah. I've like toyed with getting a doctorate just so that I wouldn't need an honorific that is gendered. Is that the most non-binary thing in the world? Probably. Um, so yeah, like if you programmed before, cool. If you haven't programmed before but want to learn how to make video games, cool. If you want to learn about making video games, cool. We're like here for it, right? Um, and like programming's weird. I say this all the time, but like learning how to program in one context um, doesn't necessarily like mean that you are good at programming in another context. Like I can't do web stuff like at all because I put no time into learning how to do that, right? But I can do video games pretty well. Um, yeah, I always have my students call me a professor just because like it's it you know again takes the gendered stuff out of it and also just sounds good. I'm gonna turn a light on. Be right back because like a light blew out over there. I need to get a new one, but I do have this overhead one, so let me just turn that on quickly. Non-binary Dr. Crew representing. um, so yeah, like that probably covers most of y'all. How's it going, Cicada? Um, and like Nolan is all of this, so it's probably gonna be like very super basic for those of you who are both programmers and specifically game programmers. That's fine. I don't super care. But yeah, like Nolan, also a Reverend Q in chat, is the one who gave this its name. So happy to have you here with us. But yeah, it's right in the name. This is for everyone. Cool. So like, expectations go both ways. Like, what should you expect out of this? What should you expect out of me, etc. I'm gonna talk about that like really briefly. Like from you, I want y'all to be nice to each other. That should go without saying. But like, again, this is on the internet. Anyone can be here. So I want to underscore that like I don't tolerate people being mean to one another. The information is cumulative, so like this is gonna, like I said, go for a few weeks. I think like I'm planning about 6 sessions, and so come as often as you can if you want to get the most out of it. That I'm glad that you're able to make this one because this is I think it's gonna be fun. You also are a game programmer though, so like we'll see how much you actually get out of this. Ask questions if you don't get something, and it's gonna be kind of weird because we're in I'm planning on doing it weekly. Same time, same station is what I'm planning anyway. Like with allowances for just like life erupting and whatever. So yeah, weekly planning like 5:30ish. If that doesn't work for some of y'all, like let me know. I'm pretty flexible on Wednesdays. Oh yeah, thank you. What was I saying? I'm pretty flexible on Wednesdays, and like Wednesdays probably the best day for me to do it. So I could push it back or not, or keep it at the same, whatever. And like engage with the material to the best of your ability, and let me know if I could do something better to support your learning. I'm all about like supporting different learning styles and stuff like that. And like I said up top, when I broke this rule accidentally, keep things as PG as possible because like I don't want to ostracize people who are younger and people who don't like swearing and stuff like that. So what can you expect of this and me and stuff like that? And this is like meant to be an introduction and non-exhaustive. So like there will be stuff that I don't cover, obviously. I like to do things kind of like project-based. We'll get to that in a minute. yeah, like I know that you've expressed some difficulty in programming, so I hope that this helps a bit. Um, uh, I'm planning on like doing about 3 games. We'll see. Varying levels of complexity. So like we're gonna start off pretty small with like a kind of a clicker sort of thing, and then work our way up to something with like physics and collision detection and stuff like that. And uh, since we're on like a pretty compressed timeline, we'll need to move kind of quickly. And like let me know if that's a problem, or you need me to slow down or whatever. So structurally, how am I planning this? Like I said, I'm planning about six sessions after this one. This one's kind of like, what do we need to kind of be on the same page about before we jump into things for real. It's going to be kind of project based, so we're starting with like, just kind of moving data around, and then working our way up to like physics and collision detection and stuff like that. You probably won't need your mouse today. We like, if you have a keyboard, that should be fine. And each project will be mostly self-contained, but the information will be cumulative, like I said already. I would hope that like if you're here now, then you'll be here next week if you want to like talk about what we're doing then, which is going to be like input and stuff like that, and so on and so forth, because stuff builds on each other, and there might be some things that you might miss, but maybe not. Also, like if there's something where you're like, oh, I know this super well, like whatever, I'll be talking about what the thing is each week on my Twitter, I think. Yeah, I hope that you find it, because that sounds like a frustrating, annoying thing. Okay, so with all that out of the way, let's quickly talk about like programming and how programming works, basically. Like, this is, again, non-exhaustive, the things that we're going to need to know to start making something. That's kind of like the way that I approach a lot of stuff, is like give my students, like talking about all of my students, like, right, the amount of stuff that they need in order to start making stuff. So we don't need to like talk about everything, and so this is just kind of like the very sort of basic bits of what goes into making a game. We're going to be using this game engine called Love, which I like a lot. It's got like some problems, but like some really weird problems that I'm going to talk about a bit later. It's open source, which is nice, and it cuts out like a lot of the barriers for game making. For like learning game making specifically, like there's no editor, it's just like you have your code, you write your code, and you run it, and then it runs, right? You can download it at love2d.org. I'll quickly pull that up. love2d.org. Yeah, this is the engine, and to get it, you could like download whatever applies to you. And we'll talk about like kind of how to make it run, because it works a little differently than a lot of game engines that y'all might be used to. And again, we'll talk about that in a moment. And we need some kind of code editor or text editor. I'm going to be using Atom. And the reason for that is there's lots of like nice tools that Atom has for integrating with Love. I was just laughing at Nolan in the chat. And I'll show you kind of those tools that I'm talking about in a moment. The language that we're working in is called Lua, so any text editor that has Lua support will be fine. Yeah, I really like Atom. Like, it's associated with GitHub, so it therefore has problems, and it's very like opaque about like any of its inner workings sometimes. Not all the time, but like there are things where it's like I want to be able to do something and it just won't let me do it. And I'm not sure how, but like for this and for like, a bunch of stuff, it's very good. I like it a lot. So that is over here. go. And again, it auto detects what system you have and stuff like that, and should just give you a download link. Yeah, another thing is that it makes it really hard to downgrade if something breaks when you upgrade to the new version, because things do sometimes. But I think it should be fine. Like all the tools that yeah, like if you use GitHub a lot, it's very good for that. Like, after Microsoft bought GitHub, I started to side eye them a little bit because you know, but yeah, it's very nice for that. Because that's the trend of things, I think, Demon Blooded. So let's quickly write and run a love program. So I'm gonna pull up a new thing. Get rid of all this. I just make this a new window. I've done this ahead of time. It's fine. So here we go. This is Adam. And so I'm going to add a project folder. I'm actually going to folder structure looks like. I have some folders that are named weird things. So I'm gonna get rid of all this. This is old class, and I'm gonna make a new file. We're just gonna call it main.lua. So a few things about how love works that I'm gonna talk. There we go. Managing multiple windows is frustrating sometimes. Managing multiple desktops as well. Okay, so the way that love wants to work kind of is you have a folder and you have a file called main. That's all you need to make a love program work, basically. The important thing to remember is that this has to be at kind of your top level, especially if you're using the Atom tools that I was talking about. So I'm just gonna quickly show you that. So if we're in Atom, we go to our package, whatever. And we go over to just type love. I think it's just love. And this one, love IDE. We're gonna install that. If you're using Atom, once you get that working, it'll ask you basically where is your love.exe installed. You'll point it to that, and then it'll give you a little button up here. It might here's one of the things that broke in kind of recent updates of Atom. This just showed up as a square without a picture in it. So it should look like a play button, but if you don't see anything there, just mouse over, and if it changes color, this square changes color, it's the same thing. So what that is going to look for, though, is the most recently opened one of these folders with a main.lua file in it. Oh, okay, so to do that, you hold down. Do I have a keyboard that isn't this one? No. Hold down Control and then the that way slash, the one that's right under backspace, and that opens that up. And or closes it. I forget what menu it's under. Is it? No. It's in one of these though. Tree view? Yeah. So if you go into view and then you say toggle tree view, it opens that up also. So with all that out of the way, there are a few ways to run a love program. I'll show you the way that if we're using Atom, and then if you're not using Atom, I'll show you how to do it as well. So let's just write a quick little program. So I'm going to talk about like what all this means in a moment. It's not a ton. So say love dot draw. Whoops. And this should be function love dot draw. And then let's say I don't know. Let's say print hello world to the screen. Dot graphics dot print. Okay. Control S to save. Hit this button, and there we have it. Right. So, gonna talk about like what all that means in a moment. But, like, click this, it runs, cool, we're good. If you're not using Atom, you need to know where, like, the love directory is. So, again, I'm going to do this off. So, I think mine. So we have this this thing that says love and wherever you installed it to. So mine's just in like drive D, love, and then it loads up this if you click on it when there's not a game installed. Again, super cute. But if you have a game file, put that. I always forget. Yeah. Yes, yeah. So here's just the folder with the game that I made in it. If I just drag this onto the game, onto our love, are you not going to? Wonder if they changed something. That's curious. I never do it this way, so there might be something weird about how it works. So yeah, if you're not using Atom, you can also do it through the terminal. How do you get to the love package again? So you like how did I get to here? Do you mean? Yeah, download it from love2d.org if you didn't do that. This is curious. I don't know. So I'm just gonna say at this point, I'm recommending that you use Atom to do this because it has tools that let you do it easily. Because I never do it not using Atom basically. Again, live instruction that some of which I did. In Atom, so to get to the package manager, you hold down Control Shift P and then type in install package like that, and then in here you type love, and it should be this one, love IDE. So cool. Hope that makes sense. If not, let me know. So we did that. We did that. We did that. We did that. So you shouldn't have to install a Lua interpreter. And if you do, I'm pretty sure that that package comes with those dependencies. Yeah, I don't think that I've ever installed a Lua interpreter in my life that didn't like come with something else. So yeah, I think that package should come with all the like the linter and stuff like that that you need. Um, are you getting an error or something like that, or um, yeah, as Cicada says in chat, you could also go to Edit Preferences Install. I just like the little I like using keyboards. So when we're talking about code and like hit me back on that that question. So when we're talking about code, there are a few like things that we needed that we're kind of dealing with, right? Um, oh, okay. So, uh, I don't know where it is in the menu. I've never um here. Right in here, you can say toggle command palette, and that opens up the thing that I did with the keyboard, and then you can just type in install package. Um, so you don't have to worry about that right now, though. If it's being difficult, you can like ask me afterwards or whatever. And I also like a bunch of you come from a Discord that I co-run with a friend of mine. I set up comma. Uh, I set up a Discord also for this thing specifically. So if you want to join that exists and will continue to exist, I think. So, anyways, moving on. And let me know if you Yes, that is also true. Yeah, like this file should be. I don't know if I could zoom in here. Should be. No, I can't zoom in there. Should be main.lua. And that once you have like the Lua linter and stuff like that installed, that should fix all of your syntax highlighting and stuff like that. Is that what you're talking about before, Edward? Sorry if I missed that. So let's quickly talk about again like what the different parts that we're dealing with are, right? And yeah, like to leave a bunch of time for. Okay, gotcha. Um, yeah, I lost my train of thought. Sorry. Um, so when we're dealing with making video games, there are like a few different things that we need to think about, sort of. The in the broadest strokes, those things are variables, functions, and data structures. Like that's the way that I see it anyway. That at the like again super high top level. We could talk about like objects and classes and stuff like that later. Lua doesn't really have like an object-oriented structure, but there are ways to kind of fake it. Which like data structure, the Lua has one data structure, which we can kind of make behave like an object. So we'll talk about all that stuff later on, and like that was all kind of for people who know programming. But if you don't, like, don't worry about it. We're gonna get to all those bits. So some you probably know, a lot of you probably know what a variable is, but like, because we've all kind of taken math classes and things. But gonna quickly talk about it now. So In programming, though, variables are kind of like a name that we give to a piece of information. If we have a character, for instance, who has health, the health is probably a number at some point, right? And we'll probably have a variable called health that represents the current health of the character. There, in Lua, there are like a few different kinds of variables that we're going to concern ourselves with. The first kind are numbers. Lua doesn't really make a distinction between I mean, it does make a distinction between integers and decimals, but we don't need to like tell it that there's that distinction. Words or characters, so what we call strings usually, or excuse me, characters. Again, Lua doesn't make a distinction between those two, and Lua is what we call dynamically typed, which means that you can just give it some data and it will kind of know what kind of data it's working with. You don't have to specifically tell it like, okay, this is going to be a number. Treat it like a number, you know. And like toggles, or what we call booleans, right? So things that could be on or off, or true or false. They're called booleans, but I like to not use confusing language when I can, right? So in going back to our code, in Lua, it's very simple to make a variable. I'm going to make another function called love.load. And let's call it text. Our text equals I don't know, could just be hello world again. So now at the very start of our game, we are making this text, and we're setting it to be this value, right? So like whenever you have a single equals operator, that just basically means take whatever's here and put it into this. So now this name refers to whatever piece of information we're giving it. And then we could use that like wherever. Like here, we could just replace this with our text, and it'll be the same, right? And then we could change this to be like I don't know, what's another word? What are words? Welcome to programming class. Sure. And now, you know, when we run it, we have to save it, run it. Gonna save that, right? And you know, we could change that to be whatever, and like we could change it throughout the course of play also, right? Like if you have a user interface or something like that, you might want to update or change what different pieces of text say. But like this is going to be the same no matter what. Like if we have like again a variable called health or whatever, then it's the same process. So make sure that you are, again, like one level deep in your folder. And feel free to like send me a screenshot of it. So let me pull up what this looks like. So to get this here, which like you kind of need to get the atom tools to work, you have to right click here and then, or, you know, say Control-Shift-A, add a project folder. And then like mine is in this one called classes. It's this one called sandbox. And I just said select folder and opened it. And you're going to put main.lua inside of that, right? So there should be a folder with a file called main.lua in this sidebar thing. That's called tree view or whatever it is. And if that's not there, then when you use this, it probably won't work. But and if it's like, if you have a nested file or something like that, it also probably won't work. So just make sure that those two things are true, and then it should work. But if it doesn't, I'm around you. You know how to get in touch with me. So where are we? So like I was saying, it's always the same thing. We're always going to say like whatever the variable name is equals whatever the piece of data is. And these can get like really complicated also. Like if we might have like a variable called character, which represents like a whole bunch of pieces of information. Like, your character's health, your character's speed, your character's dimensions, etc. So the next piece that we want to concern ourselves with is what are called functions. And functions are, I like to think of them kind of like the verbs of any program. Like anytime something is going to be done, it's going to probably be a function that's doing it. They allow you to kind of like bundle together pieces of action almost that your program will do. So like if your character jumps or shoots or things like that, you more likely than not you'll have a function that says jump or shoot or whatever. We've already written a few functions, like these are functions, but they're a little bit different than the way that most functions work. And we're going to talk about that in like 3 more slides or something. So yeah, like as opposed to, if we have an action that needs to be repeated or something like that, writing out all of our code over and over and over again, we can just put it in like, function, like we could say like function print text or whatever. I'm getting a bit ahead of myself here, but that's fine. And then we can say like this. And then we can write print text. And does the same thing. So it's like they do a few things. Most of the time it's like for organization, right? Like we have a bunch of stuff. Like games can get really complicated, right? So we want ways of bundling functionality that we can then reuse a bunch of times without having to rewrite code over and over again. If you ever find yourself rewriting code, you're probably like there's probably a more streamlined way to go about doing it. But like also kind of whatever, like if a way works for you, fine. But like more often than not, like you're gonna want, if you have a game with jumping in it, a jump function rather than just putting that all like in your draw function or whatever, So yeah, I just talked about defining and calling functions. Like I said, I was getting a bit ahead of myself. I like to have like a slide deck ready, even though like I do kind of talk outside of it a lot of the time. But as you just kind of saw me, oh no, yeah, that's like probably the case. But if it keeps on being a problem, I'll and you can poke me afterwards, and I can like you could and I could walk you through sort of like what, or we could look at what the problem is. I'm sorry I don't have like like a clean install, right? To kind of walk everyone through this process, but I can also point you towards some YouTube videos. So there are kind of like 2 parts to a function. There's like when we tell it what it is, and then there's when we use it, right? So these 2 kind of parts are called defining it and calling it. Yeah, that's the default path of where it should go. So here, let me pop back over here. Install. So in here, in settings, this is where you would put the path. So in here, going back here, in here, if we go to install packages, freak out a little bit. We go to, so from packages, look for our Lua IDE, go to settings, and then here is where we put a path. So whatever, wherever the install is, you're going to put it here, and then it should work. And if not, let me know. So back here. So like a function, as I was saying, is basically like a process that happens in a particular order, in the order that we write instructions in. And when we write out these instructions or rules, kind of, we're defining it, right? So like here, we are making a variable, setting it to this, and then printing it. So it's first going to define our variable, and then it's going to print it to the screen. So, but if we don't, if you do double dash, that comments out some code. So that basically means that this won't be read by the compiler. Get rid of that, actually. If we never like use it anywhere, basically, it's not the whatever we told it to do isn't going to happen. So to define a function in Lua, we just write function, the name of the function, two little open and close parentheses. We'll talk about what these mean in a moment, and then an end afterwards. And in between, it could be kind of whatever we want it to do, right? So we have this function defined. If we want to call it, meaning use it, we have to just write the name and the two things. So we don't need to worry about writing function. We just need to worry about the name and then open and close parentheses. So here we say print text, open and close parentheses. But like, okay, so this does the thing, right? That's fine. But like, what do these things mean? Inside of here is where we, what's called like pass an argument. Basically means if we want anything to be like possible to change when we call it, as opposed to when we define it, we're gonna use the space in between these, right? So, for instance, what if we didn't want it to always say this? We could say print text and then give it some text that we wanted to print. So now, whatever we write here when we call our function is going to be passed or set here, and then that's going to be set here, right? So like we could say, like, hi folks, exclamation point, exclamation point, exclamation point. And now, when we run it, it's going to say that. And, what if we wanted to maybe move it around the screen also? We could say, I don't know, X position. It would say 50, I guess. Then it will have moved. So if you want things to change when you call a function, I'm going to put some information in here. Hope that makes sense. It's running a little short on time, but that's fine. As I've said many times, this is going to be squished time-wise. In order to, again, make the thing do the thing, we just need to write the name wherever we want it, wherever we want it to happen. So did that. So let's quickly talk about data structures. Like I said, there's a data structure in Lua. It's called a table. And data structures are basically a way of letting us take a bunch of values and stick them into one variable. So, like I used the example of like a character before, where we might have like a bunch of different pieces of information that we want to compress into one kind of. We might use a data structure for that, a table for that. Also, like an inventory, like I said here, like a very classic game example of that, where you have a bunch of different. That in Lua would probably be like a table of other tables, right? Where we have like all these items that all have a bunch of information associated with them that we all want to contain in one sort of wrapper. We'll be talking about this a bunch more later, so you don't have to worry too much about it. So finally we get to like the parts of a love game, which we've been talking about a little bit, but like there are three functions that we need to, heck yeah, good job. What was the problem? So there are three functions that we need to talk about. We've already seen two of them, but I just want to like quickly talk about what each of these functions is and what it does. So we have one called load, we have one called update, and we have one called draw. The load function, as we saw over here, it's love.load is where we do all of our setup operations. So that's like setting variables to their default values, loading levels from a file if we have one, putting our player where they start, etc. It runs once. So like as soon as we hit play, the load function runs, and then it never runs again. Oh, interesting. So then we have this function called the update function. A lot of game engines, if you've used one before, have an update function, and the one in Love is very similar, with one like distinction that I'll talk about a bit later. Maybe not today even, but we'll get there. This function happens after load and every frame thereafter, so it's constantly happening until the program is shut off. This is where like we write the bulk of our game logic. And like if you want to check if your character is bumping into a wall or something like that, or if a button's being pressed, if they're getting hit, etc., this is where all of that stuff will happen. I forgot to do the little fade in for this, but that's fine. And finally, we have the draw function. As we know, like a lot of video games have a display on the screen, right? If you ever want to display anything to a screen, you'll use the draw function. So that's why I wrote this here, right? I wrote our print text function in the draw function because it dealt with putting something on the screen. Like update, draw runs every frame forever, but only deals with graphical information. Okay. This is an important thing to keep in mind, though. Like, unlike functions that we make ourselves, though, these ones don't need to be called. They happen as soon as the program runs and kind of just exist, right? So that's why, like, you didn't see me write, like, you know, love.update here or whatever. We can write things like that later, but for the time being, right now, all we have to worry about is like this runs. Once we write this like this will happen. Once we write this like this will happen, etc. So, thought I had an ending thing with some like exercises and stuff like that here. Let me make sure. because we're basically at the end of what I planned for today. Um, good stream content. Okay, yeah. So last thing that I want to talk about is screen coordinates. So an important thing for being able to hit the ground running with 2D game programming is how to put stuff on a screen. So for instance, here, I'm gonna run this. So y'all probably know about like X and Y coordinates, right? Computer screens are basically like giant grids of pixels, right? And there's everything on the screen has an X coordinate and a Y coordinate. The X is from side to side, the Y is up and down. Like most 2D game engines, Love starts drawing from the top corner here and goes down for the Y and to the side like this for the X. So that's basically just because of the order that it draws things in. So like 0, 0 is there, and then it draws out and then draws out. So if we want to, let's say, like move this all the way over here, we could say, like, I don't know, 200 or whatever. That moves it over a little bit. I don't know how big this window is. So the bigger the X is, the more this way it is. And the bigger the Y is, the more down it is, if that makes sense. So, whoop. Yeah, if I wanted to make it go down, I would make the Y bigger. It gets a little confusing sometimes because when you're dealing with like up and down, you have to kind of reverse them in your head and in your code. So we can also like do some math with objects. So like if we wanted to, I'm gonna actually make this rather than text. I'm gonna make it rectangle. Rectangle. So one thing that the Love ID affords you is that it gives you like, tells you what the things are that it wants, that it's expecting. So let's just make it like 50 and 50, and then we'll make it at 100 and 100. Simple. And now, so we got this rectangle on the screen. Let's just, for simplicity, gonna write in our update function finally. Update. We'll talk about what DT means in a moment. I say like love dot keyboard dot is down space. Going to write this in an if statement. We'll talk about if statements more later. And I'm going to make a variable called rectangle x equals 100. So that's just going to be this value, right? So if I press the space key, then let's say rectangle x equals rectangle x plus 10. What is what? Might be just me again not being able to read right or something like that, which happens. Or maybe I've got one of the functions wrong. T. Oh, whoops. Be careful of that also. Like, the autocomplete is very overzealous, so it like wants to. So now, whenever I'm holding down the space key, it moves a little bit. Yeah, thanks, Edward. Yeah. So like, if you let me just show you that so like you can be careful of it. If you type like function and then love dot load or whatever, it will autocomplete with putting function here again. So that's something to watch out for. It's like I said, kind of overzealous with it running a little over time. But so yeah, you can like, that's kind of the basics of how you move objects around a screen. We'll talk about that more next time. So yeah, made a box move. So a bit of further reading. We go to love.love2d.org. We go to over here the wiki section. This is like all of the functions that exist inside of Love. So there are functions that we write that are things that weren't programmed into the engine. But then there are things like love.graphics.rectangle, things that already exist inside of this engine that just make our lives easier, right? It's good to familiarize yourself with some of them. So like we got like audio libraries, physics libraries. We're gonna not worry about the physics, but like mouse and keyboard are very important. Math is helpful. Image and graphics are helpful. File system's helpful. So like that's where to go if you don't know like what the next thing to do is. Like maybe start with looking at what is available to you. There's also this tutorials section. So like there, like I said, this is meant to be non-exhaustive. So there's a lot of people who have written a lot about this engine, and you can look through some of these. Some of them are very useful. So far as I don't know why this is formatted weird. Things to practice in the next week or whatever. It's like try putting multiple boxes on the screen. Make them move on their own at different speeds and or in different directions. And you can just do that by like changing some of these numbers, right? Like make the boxes move when you press different keys. Like maybe map like a red box to the R key and have that move in a direction when you press the R key. So yeah, that's what I got for today. I hope that was useful and got you excited about what's to come. If not, then let me know what I can do better. So if you want to contact me, I think most of you know me already, but like otherwise, find me on Twitter at Synodai or email me at hyacinth@hyacinth.com. My DMs are usually open unless people are being the worst. There's also a Discord for this class at tinyurl.com/game dev for everyone. So if you use Discord, that's going to be there. Again, like I wasn't sure who was going to be here, if it was like most of the people that I know or not. So I set that up just so that like people would have a kind of neutral place to contact me. But if you know me and have questions, ask me. Even if you don't know me and you have questions, you could just ask me also. But like that's the reason for my setting up the Discord. I also have a coffee if you want to help me monetarily. Some of this stuff takes a bit of work, so that would be useful if you have some dollars to spare and found anything in this useful or whatever. No pressure though, you know, like I'm doing this because I want to and I'm unemployed. So yeah, thanks so much for coming and spending this hour-ish with me, learning how to the very basics of making video games. Next time we're going to start making like a clicker game, basically, is what I think our first game is going to be. Do that in like a session and a half, and then moving on to something a bit more complicated. Care of yourselves. Peace. Let me know wherever if you have any more questions or. Bye.